Hey, good evening. This is Greg Williams. Tonight, what I want to do is just kind of review real briefly handwriting a web page from scratch. I'm going to jump into TextEdit on the Mac. I've got all sorts of other stuff open, I see. And we're going to go File, New. What we want to do when we're working with any web page is make sure that we're working in a text-only format. At the moment, this particular page is formatted. You can tell because it's offering fonts and font sizes. So we're going to go up to Format, Make Plain Text. By the way, you could be doing this just as easily in Notepad that came with your Microsoft Windows. Okay. So the first thing that a web page is going to do when it gets loaded into a browser, it needs to speak to the browser, and it needs to tell the browser what it is that we're about to do. So it's going to say, I want to speak in HTML. And I'm going to quit speaking in HTML down here. Now what we have is we have what are called tags. This is the opening HTML tag. This is the closing HTML tag. Now everything else that happens to fall between the opening and closing tags is going to be HTML. A web page is basically comprised of two separate areas. We have a head section, which contains information about the page, which is not visible inside the browser window. And we'll tell it I'm all done writing information for the head at that point. And then I have, I'm actually going to skip a line just so that we can read it easier, the body section. And we'll go down here and we'll close the body section. Anytime I open a tag, I want to make sure I also have a corresponding closing tag. So what we're looking at is everything in this area is being affected by both the HTML tag and then the head tag. Everything down here is still part of the HTML. Inside there is the body. Okay, and so let's just make a very simple thing here. Hello world. File, save as, or save if you hadn't already saved the file. And I'm going to save it onto my desktop, I hope. And I'm just going to call this 1A1, just so it'll show up at the top of the file list, .html. It's when we actually type the .html that we're letting the web browser know what we're creating. It is a plain text document. As you can see, there's no real formatting of any sort taking place in there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to do this? Yes, I'm sure I want to do this. I wouldn't have typed it if I wasn't, but just wanted to double check with me. I'm using the Command-Tab combination to go over to Safari, File, New Window, and I'm going to go File, Open File, and just browse right back to my desktop, where hopefully we'll find the file I just created. And there it is, Hello World, yay. It's not very pretty, doesn't do much. We'll notice a couple things about our browser. Here's our file name currently. Here is the path to find our file name. A1A.html is inside a folder called Desktop, which happens to be inside a folder called Student, which happens to be inside a folder called Users on my hard drive at the moment. Whew, that's a lot of this and that. We also, if we go in, and depends on which version of Safari or Firefox or Internet Explorer or Chrome you're using, but all have somewhere buried in there a way to see the page source. So if somebody has a really cool page and you want to see how it happened, why, there it is. We can actually see the page source right there of the page, and it looks just exactly like we thought it would because we just wrote it. Yay us. Now let's be a little more interesting. First thing I'm going to do is affect something that is not inside the white area, which is up here. So I'm going to just Command Tab back over to Text Edit, and I'm going to add a title tag. By the way, when we write tags in HTML, yes, they should all be lowercase. So the title tag for this document will be actually web file formats, only because I know where I'm going with it. And I need to close that title tag. And please, spelling is vital. It doesn't do a very good job of guessing what you want, so I'm going to hit Command S to save. I'm going to bounce back over to Safari. I'm going to hit Command R to refresh, and you'll notice that now it says web file formats up at the top where before it gave us the file name. Not a major change right now, but it is using the title tag to show up in the browser at the top of the browser window. Where it will also show up is it will show up in search engines and search engine rankings. If people bookmark that page, it will show up in there. So there is a rhyme and reason to using page titles. I promise all your pages should not say Untitled File 1. Okay? Every page needs its own unique title so we know what it's doing or what its purpose is. Moving on in our document, if we come over here into the body, it's not very interesting right now, but we'll make it a little bit more interesting. This is Web 101 for lack of being creative. And that's going to be my most important thing out there is the fact that we're working on Web 101. We identified the most important thing in our web page with an H1 tag. This is a top-level heading tag, is what H1 means, and it means, and we only use it. Technically, we should probably use it once per page, simply to show the main information inside the body. Some people do more, some people do less. Now, what it does not do, it does not simply make that the biggest piece of text on the page. Yes, using browser defaults it does, but we do not use header tags to change the size of text. We want to make sure it's a heading and it's the most important heading. So Command S, Command Tab, Command R, and we see we have a top-level header called Web 101. I'm going to go ahead and make a subheader on that Greg Williams. Should probably have done that. Williams / H2. And again, I hit the cap lock key and got a little lazy there. So now that's going to be a subheader or a secondary header. Now we may have several of these, and when I hit refresh on the page, we see that it provides another header along the way. If I wanted to have more of them, I certainly can. Try to, for search engine purposes, make your headers meaningful. If you have too many first and secondary headers on your page, it will weigh them down so they don't carry as much weight in the logarithms. But what we have in our top level and our secondary heading tags have more weight than what we have just in the regular page. But again, if I had 152 top level headings, it would be reading this as 1 divided by 151, and so it would really weight it down. So be careful with your headings. Use them not so much with search engines in mind, and certainly not for sizes, but use them because they make sense. This is a primary heading. This is a secondary heading. In fact, currently, we can go all the way to H6, which is a 6th level heading. I've never had to go past about 3 or 4, even in the most complex outline I've written. So use them judiciously. Okay, big word. Other tags that you should know right off the bat, we have paragraphs. Yada, yada, yada. That's what she said. We start a paragraph, and since we opened a tag, we need to close that tag. We close that paragraph tag. If we want just to bounce it over and show us, I hit Command S. Now what I have done is that triple ... actually gave me a really funky little something going on there, didn't it? Yeah, okay. And that's because a ... is an ellipse, and there are special characters for that. I'm not sure if this is the right one. Ellipse. Well, let's find out if it is. No. Okay, I'll look it up later. When we have special characters, they usually start with the and sign and end with a semicolon. So I'm just going to, in order to quickly generate a whole lot of text for this purpose, I'm going to copy that and paste it a few dozen times. Please note that I could have done all this as a single line of text. I could have 16 spaces between it. It doesn't really matter. In HTML, it completely doesn't matter if I have lots of space somewhere. It's going to read the first space, and then it's going to collapse that space. Okay? So copy that and paste it one more time. And now I have 2 paragraphs of text. And let's put hello world inside a paragraph tag. Actually, let's make it an H2 just like we did up there. We'll save it. We'll Command Tab back to the browser to test it. Command R to refresh it, and there we have a lot of paragraphs of text. I'm using the Apple Plus and Apple Minus, by the way, to change the view of my document. The interesting thing about the text as it stands on the page at the moment is as the browser changes size, the text expands or shrinks to fit the browser, which can be what you want, but there's also times when it's not going to be what you want. We do all, good layout still says we should probably limit to somewhere around 35 to 45 characters in width so people aren't moving their head and getting tired. We should probably visually break it up with spaces to keep it interesting and light looking. So just because we're doing layout for the web does not mean that everything we learned about good page layout should be thrown out the window. Okay, a couple other things that we're going to touch on here real quickly before we actually mark up a page. We have lists. Now, if you think about it, if you have a list of things to do, it could be, I need to do this first, then you do this second, then you do this third. That would be called an ordered list. And inside the list are particular items. So our first thing is wake up. And then because we opened that list item, we closed it. Now you'll notice I have not closed the list itself, the ordered list itself. I have simply closed the list item. We wake up, we drink coffee, yay, coffee. And then maybe we will, after we drink coffee, okay, if you must know, we drink more coffee. Yay, more coffee. And we close that. Nice job, Greg. L.I. We're going to close that, and now we can go ahead and close that list. What we have created is a list. This is the first thing to happen. That's the second thing to happen. That's the third thing that happens. So that's called an ordered list. And when I refresh that, we can see we have first thing to happen, second thing to happen, third thing to happen right down there. If it really doesn't matter, actually, let's put a little comment there. We can put comments in our tags so we know what we're doing or why we did it. And I will almost always have to go back and retype it. I always forget that little exclamation point. So that's a comment. And this is an ordered list for things that happen in a specific order. Okay. So coming down, if it was just a list of things, and it doesn't matter what order you do it in, it's going to be an unordered list. And let's just highlight that. Now most programs you can copy and paste. Most programs you can also, and we'll see if I get lucky and do it right this time, hold the highlight and hold the option, and as I hold my mouse and drag with the option still held, I can just drag that right on down there to copy it without having to copy and paste. And this is going to be an unordered for lists that for things that happen in no specific order. So I have a list item. What if well, let me look on my desk, and it's no particular item. I've got my iPhone plugged in over here to my right. I've got my dirty coffee cup to my left. I've got a empty bottle of water that I need to throw away or recycle, actually. Now it doesn't matter which order I write it in. And an empty checkbook. Nice. It's been so long since I've written one of those, I didn't know I still had one. Cool. And I'm going to go ahead and end that list now until I'm all done writing that list. And I'm going to save it. And when we look over here, Command R for refresh, we will see that an unordered list by default uses bullets, whereby an ordered list by default uses numbers. I say by default because when we get into cascading style sheets and actually formatting the page as opposed to identifying the pieces of the page, we can really make those do whatever we want, just like we can truthfully make the sizes of our fonts whatever we want. And that's one reason why I don't want you to get in the habit of, oh, I want it really big, so let's make it an H1, and I want it kind of big, let's make it an H2. No, we don't use sizing. We don't use HTML tags for sizing. We use it to identify the components of a piece. Okay. Other things we can we hit on real quickly. In tags, yesterday we learned that we had a horizontal rule if we wanted to line. Nice job, Greg. A line across the page. This is actually not a block element, and meaning it's going to be, actually it would be a block element, but it's not going to have a separate closing tag later on. Just doesn't make sense to. It starts and closes on its own. So let's add a little comment there. Horizontal rule. By the way, these comments, and see, there I go again, talking instead of typing. These comments will not show up on the page. And so please feel free to comment freely so you can come back at a later date and say, oh, that's what I did, or that's where that starts. It really will save you a lot of time if you'll get in the habit of commenting what you're doing. If I need a line break, just forcing something to break in the middle of the line, I'm going to come back up here and force a line break right there. And I'll exaggerate it a little bit by adding a couple of them. Line break, break, and we'll break it one more time just so that when we look at it, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You'll notice, though, that when I did that right there, I still close that tag. A line break obviously would not have anything in the middle of it. It's just saying break the line at this point. And here we can see that I have forced 3 hard line breaks in the middle of that paragraph. Now this is still considered all one paragraph, but I have for some reason forced 3 line breaks inside of that paragraph. Okay, still ending paragraph tag there. We didn't end it up here, but it's from there till I close that paragraph tag. That's all still considered one paragraph. So I got all that white space, I got those line breaks, but it's still one paragraph. Okay, so we have line breaks, we have horizontal rules, we have links. Links are anchor tags, and we have to go a little more than just having an anchor tag. Because right now it doesn't have a clue where we're going. Now between the anchor tags, it knows that Facebook is going to be affected by those 2 anchor tags. And if I go over here and hit my Command R and scroll down, I shouldn't use so much text, but now there it is, but it doesn't do anything because it doesn't know where it's supposed to go. And so we have to refine that tag a little further by using what's called an attribute. So ahref equals http:// don't get sloppy here. We need the entire URL, including the http:// which says Hypertext Transfer Protocol is what we're using to go retrieve this file. www.facebook.com. Now, anytime we're using an attribute being something that refines a tag, we're going to always have an equal sign followed by the content inside of quotation marks. So Command S, Command T, Command R. Now when I click Facebook, yes, we go to Facebook. I wish foot massages were more easily to come by. All you have to do is close your eyes and tap your ruby slippers. Okay, so we're at Facebook. Yada, 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 yada. It's still there. So we have a link to Facebook. Now let's alter that tag just a little bit more. See how we're still inside the closing and opening brackets of that tag, but this is all part of the anchor tag. I want, when I roll over this Facebook, I want a little something to come out that explains where we're going. When you click here, Facebook will open. Wow, really? Yeah, okay. And that happens to be something called a title attribute. Not to be confused with the title tag of the page, but it is an actual attribute that we can assign to different elements within our page. So I'm going to save that. Come over here. Refresh that. See the little yellow box down there at the bottom? Pull it up here so you can see it up in the middle of the screen. When we roll over it, on my browser, after about 2 seconds, when you click here, Facebook will open. Do you need that on a link? Yes, actually you do. For accessibility reasons, anytime we have a link, we must use a title tag. No, the page won't break if you don't. However, if you're doing government work or the client does government work, we must make our pages as accessible as possible, and the current standards for web accessibility include such things as title tags on links to help those who happen to be hard of seeing or maybe having a screen reader read the page to them, so it lets them know where they're going or what they're doing or what happens to be there. The other thing we can do while we're here on this link, just to really, again, show the power of the attributes to refine that anchor tag is I'm going to come in here and not only add a title tag, I'm going to tell it that I don't want it to open in the same page. I want it to open in a brand new browser window or browser tab. So target equals blank. And so when I jump back over here and I refresh it and I hit Facebook, this time, bam, bam, it's still there. And lots of people are doing that. They just need to go on Craigslist and find food. Oh, okay, interesting. Foot fetishes. Okay. Strange things you see on Facebook. Probably should have used something else as my example so I'm not getting distracted while I'm typing this, right? Okay. So, where do we go with all this? What we're going to do is I'm going to go make it all disappear. If you remember a minute ago, I titled this Web File Formats, and I have not added anything that makes it look like a web file format. Let's kill some of this excess space also. And we're going to jump over. Do I still have? No, I don't still have it. Okay, I thought I'm going to jump over to OpenOffice. By the way, if you don't like paying Microsoft, go to openoffice.org and download a fully functioning Office suite that opens Word documents and opens Excel documents and opens all that good stuff. Why pay for something that's free out there and does a mighty fine job? So we're going to jump over to quickly hide whatever that was. This is paperwork. And I'm going to I have done some typing about file format, so I'm just going to grab that and come over here and paste that inside the body of my text, of my document. Save it, and let's see what we have to start off with. Command V, oops, Command R, thank you. I've got a bunch of fun stuff, don't I? Hey, look at that. Not much use in that. Well, what's happened is I have nowhere in this identified what any of these pieces are. So the browser has no way of knowing how to display them. And so it's just, I haven't added line breaks or anything at all to designate what we're doing. So it just becomes one big giant line of text. And if I were able to open my browser wide enough, it would stretch from one side to the other. So this web file formats is going to be the most important part of my document. By the way, in writing web pages, write the content first. Please, it will save you hours of frustration. Then go mark up the document. Then go worry about the formatting with your CSS. If you do it backwards, you're going to be trying to force stuff in that doesn't fit. So write the document, mark up the document. If you then need to add images to enhance the content, you add those images, and then you go and worry about making the page pretty. Okay, so let's see. That's going to be I'm going to make those H2 secondary headings. Truthfully, I could say it's just a list of definitions and start burying definitions inside definition, or lists inside lists, but I'm not going to do that to you tonight. So I'm going to make those some secondary headings. And what I am doing, I used Apple C to copy that tag, and I'm just using Apple V or Command V to paste it, because I just am too lazy really to sit there and type the same things over and over again. And I'm going to do it one more time here and for my closing tag, Command C, and go back and close those things. Now that'll force this up to this line up to there. last time. We'll just take a little checkup and see how we're doing. All this is going to still be just one giant nightmare, so we're going to save this. Command save, bounce over, and command refresh. So there's our top level heading. We've got a series of second level headings. Got a problem going on right down here. I forgot, I think, to close that H2 is what it looks like. So let's go fix that up. Command V. And depending on whether that's a hyphen, a dash, or an M-line, we have different special codes if I need it. But since it's the beginning of it's going to actually not be part of that heading, I'm just not going to worry too much about getting those funky little characters there. And let's make this kind of consistent. I had thought that I might make SWF Macromedia Flash file all part of that heading, but I think just for consistency's sake, I'm going to make that a line item, list item, and make that just my heading. So double check, make sure, yeah, okay, we're looking much better now. Now I just need to kind of clean up these lists that I have. I have an unordered list starting off at the top. I have an unordered list here. I have it, and I'll just copy that. I have another unordered list here, an unordered list there, an unordered list there, and even though it's not much of a list, I'm still, just so we have some consistency in the layout, I'm going to still call these unordered lists underneath those two add-ins. I'll add a little space so we don't get them lost again. And because I opened the unordered list, I have to go and, yes, close the unordered list. And close the unordered list, and close, and close, and close, and close. Okay, cool. Inside the lists, let's see what that did to it. Okay, it added an indentation basically, making that a list without any real definitions to it. So now inside those lists, I'm going to come in and I'm going to add list items. Now, if you're paying attention, all these list items, truthfully, are inside of the list themselves, right? So when we get ready to close them here in a minute, that's going to become important. This is probably the quickest way I know how to do it. But this really is how I go and do things. I develop the content, and then I go mark up the page. These are, I'm going to use these as list items. Okay. Ooh, got a typo there. Thank you, spell check. And command B, and the list item inside here. And a list item inside here. And now I can go start closing those list items. Now when you go to close tags, remember the list items are inside the unordered list, so it makes sense to close the list item before the unordered list. But you close tags in the opposite order that you place them. So I'm unordered list, list item. Now I've got to close the list item, close the unordered list, and then close the body and close the HTML. And so pay very much close attention to the order that you place your tags. It does matter. Especially when you put two list items beside each other like that. Nice, Greg. And V, Command P, Command V, Command P. You could actually, if you knew what you were doing, go and create keys for some of this right there on your keyboard, but that's beyond the scope of what we're doing here, and I truthfully am not going to need these particular codes often enough on the keyboard to go through the problems of creating special functions on my keyboard to keep from having to do this. I know you have to watch me do it, and I'm sorry. I don't know how to. Can't make these old fingers paste any quicker than they're doing without starting to really mess things up. So Command V, and that should be it. Command S, bounce over there. Command R, and so there's our web page, nice and formatted out with our H1s, our H2s, our bulleted unordered lists, and it has been saved. It is a file called 1a1.html on my desktop, and if I were to upload this onto the web, it would look just like this. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something, and practice. Practice, 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 practice. Oh, one other thing. Let me do this real quick. I know, sorry. I always do that. I dismiss class, and then I say, oh, wait a second. So I'm going to dismiss class and then do something. Next time I come back to TextEdit, or many of the text windows out there, the text editors out there, when I go File, Open, and I go back to open that and rework it, if I don't hit this little Ignore Rich Text command and just hit Open, it's going to try to show me a web page. But I can't really, now I've got formatting up here that has nothing to do with what I'm creating. I can't go in there and manually add my tags or edit my tags. That is not what we want. Instead, we want to go File, Open, and make sure we hit that Ignore Rich Text commands. Now that's going to open as just a TXT document. Ah, there's that lovely code. Now I can go in and work with it. Okay? If you have any questions, ask me in class, and otherwise, thank you for paying attention. And again, I'm trying to find how to close it.